Hello, my name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and this is my channel, Have Roots, Will Travel. I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last year, I've been examining Les Filles du Roi, and we are doing that today as well. Many of my videos will be and have been about travel, about genealogy, but over this past period, I have really been obsessed with completing the biographies of over 700 of these amazing women. We are at episode 134 today, so we've got a long way to go. We've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. Just want to introduce you to some of my little icons here. I've got the subscribe button. Appreciate it if you would subscribe. And the like button helps share the love. And then we've got the notifications alert, so you get notified every time I post new content. And then we've got three new icons. Coffee is I now belong to the coffee club, if you will. And you can click on that link and buy me a cup of coffee. It's a one-time donation to support the channel. And then we have the Etsy store that I created. I've got 2 digital downloads that are of interest to Filles du Roi, descendants. And also the biggest one is Patreon. I'm now a member of the Patreon, and you can support the channel by on a monthly basis, and I would greatly appreciate that. You can find out more about that by clicking on the links that I've provided. So thanks again, and let's get started. Today's episode is episode 134, Marguerite Lamirault. She is a viewer request. She's also the great-grandmother of the husband of a dear friend of mine, and she is the great-grandmother of another dear friend of mine from high school. So with that, let's get to know Marguerite and find out what her story is. So Marguerite was born in 1645 in Paris, France. She was born in the parish of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois in the first arrondissement of Paris, and we want to say that her parents were François Lamirault and Jeanne Clot. Now, of course, Paris is part of Île-de-France, so it's in that little purple section there. And then the arrondissement, remember that Paris is laid out in a circular fashion. She's in that number 1 arrondissement. The church where she would have been baptized in is extremely famous. Now, the current church was built in the 13th century with major modifications in the 15th and 16th. From 1608 until 1806, it was the parish church for the inhabitants of the palace. And many, many notable artists and architects who worked on the palace have their tombs in this church. Since the 2019 fire, which badly damaged Notre Dame de Paris Cathedral, the cathedral's regular services were held at Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois, which indicates how large it is. The first arrondissement of Paris is one of the 20 arrondissements of the capital city of France. It is also known as Le Louvre. This arrondissement is situated principally on the right bank of the River Seine. It's also included on the west end of Île de la Cité. Remember the island that forms part of Paris? This locality is one of the oldest areas of Paris, as you can imagine. And it was conquered by the Romans in 52 BC and all of that. It's the least populated of the cities of arrondissement, one of the smallest, with a land area of only about 451 acres, something like that, less than a mile. And a significant part of this area is occupied by the Louvre Museum and the Tuileries Gardens. The Forum des Halles is the largest shopping mall in Paris. Gotta go there. And much of the remainder of the arrondissement is dedicated to business and administration. So it's quite the place to see, and this is where her beginnings were. So let's find out what brought her to New France. So I don't have any information that Marguerite's parents passed away, and that's what prompted her. I do know that her father was the coach driver for the Queen. So, the fact that it was the Filles du Roi, and she had a connection. I suspect this was something that they promoted, and certainly she was made aware of it. But really interesting job that he had, of course. So she arrived on La Nouvelle France on July 3rd, 1668. Let's find out who she selected and who selected her. So the groom that she selected and who selected her, his name was Honoré Martel de la Montagne, which means also known as the mountain. I don't know if it meant he was a giant of a man or not. He was born in 1632, making him about 12 to 13 years older than Marguerite. He was also born in Paris, France, but his parish was Saint Eustache. His parents were Jean Martel and Marie Duchesne. You will note that they are both from the first arrondissement. So they're literally from the same. I haven't seen this yet. I have seen them from the same countries or the same, regions or that sort of thing. Rarely do I see something so specific. But he was baptized in the Church of Saint Eustache. And this present building was built between 1532 and 1632. This church was also used during the Easter Mass at Notre Dame in 2019. Because of the fire, they used Saint Eustache. And so we've talked about the Premier Arrondissement being a very businesslike. It's also called Le Louvre because the Louvre Museum occupies so much of it. Now, why did Honoré come to New France? Honoré came, as so many did before him, as a soldier with the Carignan regiment. He arrived with the Berthier Company, and he arrived on June 30th, 1665. So he was there a few years before her. And of course, once the soldiers arrived in New France and their mission was accomplished, they were urged to stay on and given land or promises of money and that sort of thing in order for New France to begin populating. So November 26, 1668, shortly 4 or 5 months after she arrived, they are married in Quebec City. So the family settles at Neuville, which we've come to a few times, and Neuville is actually one of the places in Quebec where they have the most, other than, Quebec City and different places. I think they're the third largest settlement for Filles du Roi. So we've come here quite a few times. We'll be back. Neuville is a village on the north shore of the St. Lawrence River, just west of Quebec City. And it was founded in 1684, and it remains one of the most beautiful places in Quebec. And you can see on the right that beauty is timeless. In 1653, the area was granted as a seigneurie by Jean de Lauzon to Jean Bourdon de Saint-Jean for his son, Jean-François Bourdon de Domburg, who was an engineer, surveyor, cartographer, and attorney general to the sovereign. So this area was known as Domburg until a certain amount of time. So if you see that, it's Neuville. In 1680, the Domburg seigneurie was acquired by Nicolas Dupont de Neuville, and hence we go. So in 1680, the seigneurie was then known as Neuville. In 1679, the Saint François de Sales parish was formed, and it became a civil parish in 1684. The place was also known as Pointe-aux-Trembles, or Pointe-aux-Trembles without an S, in reference to the point on which the church was built, which was once covered by aspen and birch. Now, that being said, when you see Pointe-aux-Trembles, remember, there's a Pointe-aux-Trembles in Montreal, which is far more common. But you may, in your research, see Pointe-aux-Trembles and be confused, as I was early on. It does refer to this church and this section of, this particular parish as Pointe-aux-Trembles. But it is not the Pointe-aux-Trembles that we know today. All right, so just wanted to give you the FYI on that. Let's see the family they created. Your eyes do not deceive you. They had 14 children. Charles I died in infancy. Jean-François was married Marie-Madeleine Vanier and had 7 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Madeleine's mother Madeleine Bailly was a fille du roi. Joseph Alphonse married Marguerite Grenier and had 8 children, 7 of whom made it to adulthood. Her mother was Marie Boutet, another fille du roi. Marie-Madeleine married Louis Loisel and had 1 child who made it to adulthood before her early death at 28. Marguerite married Louis Courreau and had 3 children, 2 of whom made it, and then married François Duralou and had 1 child who made it to adulthood. Paul married Madeleine Guillot and had 11 children, 7 of whom made it to adulthood. Her mom was also a fille du roi, Isabelle Blais. Honoré died in infancy. Antoine married Catherine Guillot and had 11 children, 8 of whom made it to adulthood. Isabelle passed away in infancy. Anne married Charles Regnion and had 1 child who did not survive. His mother was a fille du roi, Marguerite Lamirault. Jean-Baptiste married Jeanne Roulet and had 2 children, both of whom made it to adulthood. He then married Marie-Louise Lavoie and had 3 children. Unfortunately, none of them made it. He then married Anne Simard and had 4 children, all of whom made it. Marie-Anne married Thomas Faré and had 4 children, all of whom made it. She then married François Boucher and had 2 children, both of whom married. Marie-Thérèse married Guillaume Huguenot, but did not have any children. That's amazing, right? Marguerite would pass away October 17, 1706. She was 61 years old, which even for that time was fairly young. At her death, she and Honoré would have been married 38 years, which is remarkable. Honoré would remarry the next year to a Marie Marchand, but did not have any children. He would pass away sometime between 1710 and 1714. I do not have death records for either of them. We assume that both of them are buried at the Hôtel Dieu de Quebec Cemetery, and this is a place where you can visit for sure. By 1729, they would have an astonishing 121 descendants with all those children, one would have hoped. And so I can't wait to find out who is related, other than my viewer, to this remarkable couple. So here are my top 6 resources that I use. I use other ones, but these are the ones I go to time and time again. We have number 1, La Société des Filles du Roi, which is a lineage society that will, welcome you with open arms upon, your submission of the adequate, lineage forms and all that good stuff. Really a good society. I'm a member, and I'm also the membership chair. Love to see ya. Number 2 is Quebec Genealogical E-Society, which is a new kid on the block, but really good for resources. I really recommend it. We have Nos Origines. We have Genealogy Quebec, which is, for me, like Ancestry.com. I couldn't do my job without it. We have Migration and we have Facebook. The Facebook group is wonderful as well. They are really caring and committed group that really seeks to honor their filles du roi. So have a look at that, even if you're not a Facebook person, as I'm not. But I really enjoy specific Facebook groups, and this is one of them. Sometimes I get a story that is gentle and sweet, and Honoré and Marguerite were just 2 people who found each other, who were from that same place. I don't know. I'd love to know if somehow there was a connection, between the 2 families, maybe back in Paris, just really, he came. He was a soldier. They built their life in Neuville, obviously, and this would have been definitely. They are part of the pioneer stock of that area of Quebec, and the number of descendants they produced, and the quiet commitment they had to each other and to this new life. We thank them both, and we bless their memory, and we are grateful that they came to our shores. And until I see you on episode 135, au revoir.